Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Curl up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
Hey, team members. How it going today?
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Hello. So we're going to just kind of get into this deal. It's very strange to think that it's been 5 years since the COVID lockdowns. I mean, sometimes that feels like forever ago, and it feels like just yesterday. But I came across this article in the Upshot about the lasting impacts of the pandemic. And so I wanted to kind of chat with y'all about what's changed and what your reactions are and what you still think about. So, I mean, it went from iconic memes to me mourning my high heels, not being able to wear high heels from, working from home. And some things shifted temporarily, but some things haven't bounced back. And so today we want to unpack some of that, the weird, the surprising, the things that we thought wouldn't stick or would stick, but didn't. And so where were you?
I was with you. Well, you were with me.
I was with you. You remember us eating hot dogs. I do not remember getting hot dogs.
I definitely remember us getting hot dogs. We were at Good Dog here in Houston. A friend of mine was getting ready to have a baby, and we were talking about how crazy it would be to have a baby in this world where everybody was so kind of unsure of what was coming next.
Yeah, I think I was probably so sure about, was I going to be able to get home, or was I going to be in Houston for, is this going to happen overnight or right now or whenever, and how was that going to play out?
Okay, just for the record, if you got stuck with me in Houston, I feel like you would have been fine. Dad would have been up a creek, but
yeah,
we would have had a plan.
Which is exactly, you and I would have been fine, but your dad would have been the saddest sack there was. He would not have handled that very well.
I was at work. I never left work. I was working at a gas plant, and it was kind of out in the middle of nowhere, and wasn't really interacting with very many people. For me personally, nothing really changed. I was working 40 to 80 hour weeks, 8 days on, 7 days off. So I just kept going to work.
I guess I kind of forgot about essential workers and non-essential workers. And we were a combined family. Your dad was out. He was considered an essential worker, which I kind of thought was strange. He sells lumber, but it counted. And he was out every day. I was in the medical field where I had friends who didn't have a choice, but were interacting with patients, even if they were in their homes, which is a little bit even more iffy because you don't know what else is going on in that home or who's been in that home, versus people that I knew that were in the hospital and, were working day and night, and some of them not getting to go home to their families. And yet I was sitting very comfortably in my home office worrying about everybody else.
Sure. I get that. I just feel like it was such a moment of unknown. We have no idea what's coming next. We have no idea who's going to get infected. It sounds very zombie apocalypse-esque. But nobody knew what was going on.
It kind of felt like a zombie apocalypse because it went from going to work every day and there being normal traffic to driving to work and driving home from work, just being absolute ghost town, just empty highways. I went from seeing normal cars passing me the whole time to I would start counting, and if I saw 5 cars in a 30-mile drive, that was a really busy day.
Oh, yeah. It was very apocalyptic and very strange. And then you throw in the virus portion of it, and you have to stay away from everybody, and you're going to get infected and all of this. It would make for a great book. It didn't make for a super exciting life.
And that first part, I think everybody thought, oh, this is a couple of weeks. This will be over in a couple of weeks. And then when it passed that and went deeper into that, you're like, is this what life is going to be like? And how
is this the new normal?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So definitely strange.
The hoarding was so strange. How did that get started? Where did this come from that it's like, oh, we're never going to have toilet paper. Everybody go get it right now. Where did that come from? It was just so strange. I feel like it was one little bitty store that just happened to be out that day and somebody's like, oh my God, and panicked on the internet.
Yeah.
But I didn't really hoard toilet paper. Did y'all?
Not even a little bit.
Dad
Yeah.
brought an extra home one time, but I think it was more that he got caught up at the store and realized that there wasn't very much there. And so he was like, should I go ahead and get an extra
ready.
pack? Yeah, and
Yeah.
be ready. And that's the only thing that I remember and I think it was one pack. Who knows? And I don't remember really doing anything special like, starting making bread or podcasting or singing sea shanties or anything like that. I don't remember doing anything that. Did y'all?
I mean, I did not start a podcast until I started this. But I went from being in an office full time every day with a bunch of people and interacting with tons of people all day long every day to being very, very isolated. After you left, I mean, it would be weeks before I was interacting with another person. I mean, ordering groceries online and not going to work. I didn't see anybody else.
Against your personality too.
Yeah, it was really weird. And so what I did do is I started walking. I lived in a beautiful neighborhood in Houston that was very, very walkable and pretty. And so I was walking 6 to 8 miles a day every day. And I was listening to podcasts, entire catalogs of podcasts that had been out for years. I mean, but when you're walking that far, I listened to lots of podcasts. I mean, episode after episode after episode, I walked and walked and walked and walked and walked. I had a great ass. That was my long-term side effect of COVID, and a nice tight ass.
I mean, that's not a bad side effect.
I mean, I certainly can't complain.
You were also job transitioning. And so
I was.
Was it harder? Because
it just was different. So it was in the works already when COVID really kind of came about and the lockdowns all started. But my plan was always to go from working in an office every day to working from home. And that transition in and of itself was kind of strange. I mean, you guys all know you did it. I mean, except for Cole, you guys did it too, like right along with me. And so I just kind of naturally did it along with everyone else because they couldn't go into work. And I just was scheduled not to go into work. And so it was definitely kind of a tough pill to swallow. But I think doing that and going through that with everybody and everybody talking about how weird it was helpful for me. And so it wasn't just me going through that alone. Oh, I'm not going into an office anymore. Okay, now I'm really lonely. We were all lonely. Everybody was alone. Everybody was by themselves. And it was hard. And I mean, you kind of look at everything and especially like your everyday life a little bit differently. So it's like, oh, shoot, while this is loading or saving or processing, I can go start that load of laundry really quick. Let me go grab the crock pot and put on dinner so that I'm not worried about it later. And, oh, the house smells great. This is really nice. Whereas before you didn't have that efficiency, that luxury of being able to throw in those little tasks here and there.
And none of us had kids, so we didn't have to worry about that. I know I didn't have to worry about, do I have a computer for this kid? And when are they supposed to be online? I was managing myself, not managing a family.
Becoming a teacher all of a sudden.
Yes. And so, there have been some interesting things. I have a friend who's a teacher who I talked to about this and the difference in the kids when they finally came back. And, statistics say that the U.S. specifically, kids have not
rebounded,
especially in maths and sciences, which is where they're really looking at them, and they haven't done that. But in talking to her, it's more than just a knowledge thing. It's almost a personality thing that they've gone through. They're less inclined to self-motivate. They're not interested in socialization.
But can you imagine being in those like really young, impressionable years where you're figuring out how the world works and what is normal and what you're supposed to do, and then all of the normal changes? Everything that is quote unquote normal to the rest of us, and we're prepared for and expecting of everybody to learn and know. These kids have no taste of that medicine. It just gets really quiet.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
And in some ways, I think the kids had a little bit better because they were less prone to the disease. So, but then again, if you're, especially that sandwich generation where you're taking care of older families and you've got the younger kids, but you know that they're just like little germ carrying sponges, you've got to be worried about your exposure to that older generation. So lots of things that were in there. But so some of the things that we talked about is that women took more of the responsibility, particularly for that childcare part of it, that COVID didn't see really an increase in men taking more of that responsibility. More women stayed home. More women, backed off of their jobs before men did. More women were responsible for the kids and their schoolwork, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because if you're listening to the teachers now, that didn't go very well. So,
I mean, I think that's a lot to ask of somebody to manage a daycare, manage a classroom setting, manage your household, and potentially work even part-time at the same time. That's a lot to ask somebody to do.
I agree.
And so I feel like when you're trying to allocate your mental and physical resources to managing so many different things, that everything kind of suffers.
Yeah, new things.
Especially new.
I'm working from home. I'm trying to keep my boss happy. I'm trying to manage. And imagine having 3 kids. I think it would be hard enough if you
imagine having 1.
But 3, that, especially if you're talking about different, levels. If you've got 1 nearly in high school and 1 in junior high and 1 in elementary, you're dealing with 3 different operations there and trying to get all of that done. So I cannot imagine how difficult that was for families with young children to cope with that. Teenagers who, just want to go out and hang out, and you're saying, no, you can't. You can't go here and you can't go there. And I mean, think about this. A lot of kids go to the mall and hang out and can't do that anymore. So the changes
are already hard to please.
I was trying to figure out how to say that.
We're already hard to please. And so then to be forced to hang out with your parents, what a horrible travesty that must be. And to not be able to interact with your friends and to not have the reprieve that is school and all of those different things. Like, again, they've had this little bit of a taste of the outside world and life beyond home. And then it's just completely snatched, taken away. Like I imagine those were some grumpy teenagers.
So do you think, we have talked about that we all feel like social media is not advantageous for our kids. Do you think it would have been the same thing if we hadn't had a pandemic that sent them home, that made them rely on social media more?
I think the problems with social media have more to do with just human habit and social characteristics in general. I mean, you take a society of people who for thousands of years are only able to communicate by physically being in the same area as someone and vocalizing toward them. And then you take this next step forward where you add writing. I mean, you could write something anonymously, sure, but if you wanted it to get to someone, hey, this is from so-and-so. Now you can go on the internet and you can be whoever you want to be. And you can check that to everyone that interacts with you, period. And so I think COVID helped with that. Probably not. Do I think without COVID, would it still be detrimental to developing young minds? Yeah, probably.
I think that, go back to our generation, Cole, like we're the ones who really came up in that time where social media was becoming so prolific and prevalent amongst everybody in our society. You and I probably are not exactly the norm in the way that we interact and engage with social media, and we see it more as a tool. But I think that it can be perceived by a lot of people, especially of our age and kind of us down to kids today, as the illusion of connection, the illusion of community. And I mean, you guys, I have people that I graduated high school with that I'm Facebook friends. I would never call any of them up and be like, hey, can you help me with this? Because I haven't spoken to them, but I saw that they just had a new kid and I saw that they graduated with their MBA. Like all of those, that doesn't make it real. That doesn't make us friends. And so I think that once you can kind of again, get a glimpse of the reality of that and comprehend that it's just an illusion, it's not real community, that is helpful. And I don't think that teenagers at any point in time have been very good at accepting reality. Everything is the end of the world. Everything is huge extreme swings from one to the other.
Me.
Yeah, I mean, you just don't have a concept of reality yet. And so I can only imagine that during COVID, that was a really hard, confusing, frustrating situation. You know, we've talked previously, Mom, about like the kids that were graduating high school that didn't get to have graduation ceremonies. Was my graduation ceremony a super big highlight of my life? No. Would I have been disappointed to not have one? Yeah, I would.
So it's the tradition of that, though.
Yeah. And to have that extra opportunity where your community gets to rally around you and encourage you and be excited for something that you've just accomplished, that was all taken away. That wasn't even an opportunity. And so I do want to be very complimentary of the people who stepped up and said, hey, we're going to make this happen digitally. We're going to do this virtually so that we can make a big deal of it. The people who put together the like car parades for graduates and things like that. I am so grateful and very much admire people who were able to think outside the box to go and celebrate those kids. That didn't get to have their prom. And again, like while those weren't huge monumental moments in my life, I do think that they were big at the time. And for them to just have been taken away would be really hard.
I mean, don't you think you'll always look back on your life and say, I didn't have a prom, I couldn't have a prom, or I didn't have a graduation ceremony because of COVID. It's always going to be a definition.
Yeah.
See, maybe I'm weird. I don't even remember my prom.
I was thinking I went to my junior prom, but I don't think I even went to my senior prom. But I had the choice to. These kids didn't have a choice. It was just, nope, not a deal. And it was dangled. That carrot was dangled in front of them. Hey, you get to have prom and this is going to be great. And when they're in middle school, when they're freshmen and all of this, and it's going to be so much fun and you're going to get to be so excited and all of this. And now it's just gone. Kind of feels like they got whacked with a stick instead of the carrot dangled.
So just to segue a little bit on this, one of the things that they say is lasting is that they've discovered that teenagers need to sleep in, and they're talking about moving school beginning hours, which here's my take on that. I think that if you have a kid who's in athletics, which so many high school, junior high kids are, you're not changing anything. Athletics is still going to be at 7:00 in the morning. You know, if you're serious about this, you're still going to go in to weight train or run or 2 days or whatever it is. They say that kids need more, but my take on this kind of is, I think we ought to be adjusting. And I know it sounds really stupid to say as a teenager, well, maybe they need to go to bed at 9 or 10 instead of 12. But if it's that big of an issue that, you know, it changed their natural rhythms and they woke up after sufficient amounts of sleep and that, you know, they have improved concentration, then maybe it's a matter of managing their day-to-day better.
But again, I think that that's part of what COVID really gave them an opportunity to do and kind of forced them to do in some ways, because they couldn't go out to the mall and hang out with their friends, and they couldn't go out to football games on Friday night and stay up late and do all of this. And so we've talked about, again, on several occasions, like teenagers need structure and we have to prepare them for what is real life. There are jobs that you have to wake up and be at work at 7 a.m. And this was forced upon them. Do what?
That's a strange idea. You have to show up at a job on time.
So here's a little bit of a different perspective. You know, if they're saying that naturally they're going to sleep at a later hour and they're waking up naturally at a later hour, maybe that's a suggestion that that's what our bodies should be doing. But our society, our society has moved away from what our bodies naturally want to do so that we can operate in more daylight hours, when historically speaking, we're kind of pseudo-nocturnal. We have a rhythm that operates at a different time frame than business. So I get what you're saying. Like, yeah, there are some jobs where you're going to have to get up and be at work at 7 a.m. But is that how our society should be?
I mean, I think if you look back and you look at us starting out as really being an agricultural, my granddad didn't wait until 10 o'clock to get out and plow the fields.
Sure. But do you know, did we start as an agricultural species or did we start as hunter-gatherers? Because, you know, when you start talking about the prey that we preyed upon, rabbits move around at night a lot more than they move during the day. Deer move around at night a lot more than they move during the day. Those prey species that we were after were pseudo or primarily nocturnal, meaning that if we wanted to get after them, we had to do it when they were active.
Or were they nocturnal because we weren't?
I mean, could be a combination of the two, but I mean, when you think about predators, when do lions hunt? Night.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's another thing that this study showed, was talking about dolphins sang more and turtles laid more eggs. And I mean, we had less pollution. And so, but I thought it was hysterical. Dolphins sang more. They were happier because we weren't invading their space. And yet you also had the opposite side of that, where you've got, you know, the raccoons and the coyotes and the possums that are used to living with people, and all of a sudden they had to back off because people were more around than they had been. And so it all had an effect. And I think that's the big thing. It was a chain reaction of so many things.
I was just going to say, like, the butterfly effect of the COVID lockdowns was really fascinating. I mean, think about it. More people went to national parks. There has been data that has been released on that during the pandemic than any other year in history, because they could, because that was all that they had to do, because it was kind of the choice that was made for them, and how good that was for national parks and how also detrimental that was for some of them. Like, now they have way more traffic and they couldn't keep up with the cleaning and what do you call it when it's like maintaining the natural habitats of all of this, because there are 20,000 people. Yes, the preservation. Now there are all of these people tramping through the trails that normally only see a inkling of that, you know? Yeah. And so I just feel like there's lots of butterfly effect.
But I mean, that was one of the studies that you had mentioned, is that people started flocking to natural scenery.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if it was an apartment balcony with a view of a garden, that people were flocking to these more natural vistas just to get some sort of like stress relief almost, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, there was a study done in 9 countries that showed that even a balcony or a home garden buffered the stress, improved your mood. More windows that included vegetation made you happier. So trees and plants make people happier. I mean, I've known that forever because I got to have plants around.
Mountains are calling and I must go.
There you go.
I mean, I sent you and Cal a video last week or the week before, and it's dudes will be out here saying, I needed this, and it's just a hiking trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
For sure.
That connection with outdoors and with Mother Nature, I always feel that so deeply when I walk up to the edge of the ocean, like on the beach. The world is so much bigger than Cali. The world is so much bigger, and I forget how much bigger it truly is. And I am just in awe. And to stand there and kind of begin to contemplate the vastness of the universe beyond me and my little tiny speck of a world is awe-inspiring. And so I think that is good. It adds perspective for so many of us, because it's not just about us. It's not just about me. I'm not the only one who matters.
Do you think people still recognize that 5 years later? Do you think we're still cognizant that we need trees and plants to be happy?
I think some people do. I think it was a good lesson for lots of people that not everyone has retained. You know, do I walk 6 to 8 miles a day? No. Do I walk 4 or 5 times a week? Yes. I do, because I enjoyed that so much. And I mean, Mom, you and I, we've talked about it on the New Year's resolution episode. We've been walking 3 days a week from 300 miles away for closer to a year, because that's our special time that we get to hang out and be together. And we went and walked this morning and it was raining where you are. So you had to walk inside and you're like, this is frustrating. And I walk so much slower, and it makes a difference when you get to be outside. And even though we're not together, we still get to be outside.
I have to tell you, I mentioned that to a friend this week. I was having lunch and she said, I cannot imagine having the kind of conversations that you have with Callie with my daughters. They don't have that kind of time to talk to me. So kudos to you for talking to your mom.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know that I deserve those. I feel like for me, it is a non-negotiable part of my schedule because it's important to me. And so whatever that is for anybody else, you find the time, you make the time. And, you know, from a totally and completely tangent perspective here, not talking about COVID specifically, you're my friend. You're my best friend. And I love getting to catch up with you and give you a hard time about this that's going on in your life.
I solve lots of the world's problems on those.
Yeah. And sometimes we just bitch and complain about what's going on in ours so we don't have to worry about it anymore, because getting it out, it feels better. And so, I mean, that's just, for me, that's one of my priorities. You are my priority. I love you guys.
You look so cute.
We are so cute.
Okay. The thing that bothered you the most about COVID?
The thing that, and I think this is one that has stuck around, is, and maybe it wasn't really brought about by COVID, but was more exemplified by COVID and has stayed that way, is the divisiveness that is projected and picked up and run with by our societies. Like, either you're
a masker or not, a vaxxer or not,
a vaxxer or not, or, hey, ivermectin is good and it can help you, or it's horse dewormer and you shouldn't be taking it because it's poison.
Yeah.
Like, and there's no in between. And I feel like we have not recovered from that. I feel like that made it much worse than it was.
I think that's
I don't think we've recovered from that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. The contention that I feel like that was brought upon. I mean, so we were all confused. And so I feel like that put us into a very kind of questionable mental state. I don't really know. And then it's like everybody for themselves decided, this is what I am and this is where I'm standing. And then there was so very little moving from that. I think Fauci was horrible. I think he was a saint. I mean, and it's like that.
I'm still hesitant to ask anybody if they were vaccinated or not. I mean, not that it makes a big difference to me now, but it was such a contentious question after the vaccines came out that I don't even want to bring that up.
Yeah.
Later.
I think you should be hesitant to ask a question like that, because to me personally, it's not really any of anyone else's business.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think
when it comes up though, and somebody's got COVID now, I think it's just natural to think, because you're just wondering, did the vaccination work? Did the immunities work? So there's a question. Hey, did you get a vaccine or did you get your booster? It's not that I care, because I have family members who did both. So it doesn't, it's not going to be a divisive part for us. But I think it's just a natural part of the conversation.
Well, and I think beyond that, I was working as an employer for a bunch of people who it was very, very divided, absolutely, in the medical field, in the community, that facts are facts and this is what it is. And there was so much confusion around whether or not it was productive or good or bad. But we were considered essential workers, and we had to have a certain rate of people that did get that vaccine and making sure that they got it, and watching a round of COVID take out an entire office for 2+ weeks at a time. And what that did, this sounds so, I feel like a corporate overlord all of a sudden, but I mean, watching it change your bottom line and how your inventory is ordered and your income and all of this because
business operations.
All of those things had to be taken into consideration. I was working for a series of veterinary clinics. And so there's only one veterinarian. If a veterinarian goes down and that clinic doesn't have one, that meant something totally different. That office didn't function anymore. So all of those people who were hourly workers working in that office, they don't have a job anymore. And it's temporary for the most part, but they don't get paid. And so what they have to do and how that impacted everybody else and kind of the domino rally of it all, it became really big, really fast.
So that's another thing. One of the things that is lasting is that they've discovered that office workers don't need to be tied to their desk. Research that is still being done on whether that productivity and collaboration and creativity, is still down. But I mean, so many people they discovered could work from home. And I do think that there's some question about collaboration. I do think that there's some question about productivity and that not everybody, can just be, that can be defined very easily. So I think there's a lot of that. But, I mean, it went from, I think, 7% of people working from home to 25 to 30% of paid hours people working from home. So, Cole, I think you're going to say innovation went down.
I think it's more nuanced than that personally. I think that for some people, it is not a detriment, but a boon to be able to work from home.
Sure.
Because I think that it allows them to interact in a way. So just like how you can go on Facebook and be whoever you want to be, you can have this persona. For people that may struggle with social interaction or anxiety, having to being able to have those interactions virtually allows them to communicate more comfortably. So maybe you're not able to get a message across as clearly through text, but I mean, what's stopping you if you and I are working on a project together and I am more comfortable communicating with you through a video camera in my home office, then I'm going to be more productive in those meetings because I'm not, maybe she thinks my hair looks bad. Maybe
we would still do that on video.
Sure. But when you're doing it on video, you're not thinking about it as much as you are when you're in office surrounded by people for your entire 8-hour day. You're not sitting there having that anxiety thinking, what are other people thinking about me? Because you're in your own home office. You have that extra level of comfort, which allows you to communicate more freely, which potentially allows you to be more productive. Now, I think the inverse of that can be true as well. I think some people communicate much, much better in person. They need that interaction with other people to be in their kind of flow state, in their comfort zone, and they're good at that. And I think that you can still have those people work together. And so you have an office building full of people that need that face-to-face interaction, and then you have a portion of your workforce that is more productive when they're working from home. And I think that that's really difficult to judge. And so it's probably really hard to ask a company to do something like that. But in the long run, I think that it would actually be beneficial to have a positive impact on productivity overall. And that was one of the things, and it's really contentious right now after COVID and everything like that. But there was a lot of coverage at the time of, productivity isn't going down with people working at home, or, productivity has actually gone up with people working from home. And that means that those people are now more productive in their personal lives because they can go start a load of laundry. They can go put dinner on. They can go start doing those little menial tasks. So now they can do that throughout the day. So they're under less stress at the end of the day. They have a more relaxing time away from work because they don't have all of these chores that have piled up that they have 3 hours to get done before they have to go to bed so that they can be up on time.
Yeah.
They're not having to get up as early, so they're getting better sleep. They're not having to spend all this time prepping themselves to go into the office. They're not having to put on makeup and shine their shoes and wear a suit and tie.
And
they
sit
can
in
just
the car,
get up, get out of bed. They don't have a 15 to 2 hour commute anymore. I mean, here's the thing. If you have a 45-minute commute to work, that's a huge portion of your day that you're just spending in the car. And so now you can devote so much more time to these other self-care tasks And that was kind of another thing that became really, really important during COVID. And I think a lot of that is because people had so much more time to commit to self-care that they were able to do so. And they start learning and say, hey, this is what I need to do to take care of myself. And I think
that's valid.
Yeah. And surely I'm certain there are people who have taken that a little bit too far, but
I can think of one or two.
In general, I think teaching companies that, hey, flexibility is really, really good because there can be some advantages to it. You may have someone who is really, really good at this specific part of their job, but they're not very good at sitting in an office with a bunch of people, but you still want to give them that job. Just let them do it from home.
So here's my segue on that one. I read an article this week about because we've learned that people can really work, from home or not in the office, that there is a significant amount of American companies who have moved to other countries, India in particular, where and the benefit of that, where you used to think that those jobs were, the kind of, they were the scam sale jobs or that kind of thing. Now these are PhD and, college education and electrical engineers because they can work in their own country. They don't have to immigrate. They can work in their own country. They're working for an American company. That American company is paying sometimes as little as a third of what they would have to pay an American to work that same job. And they can do it in another country. And so a lot of jobs have moved overseas. So Target has a huge standing, Nvidia, is that? NVIDIA, I think, big companies where in India, in some of their areas in India, they look like, big cities, downtown, big multi-story buildings because they have so many workers that are working for American companies in those areas. And I didn't realize that. And that came from knowing that people didn't have to be in the office.
I think the old adage of it takes all kinds really is true. And it takes somebody to sit in the office and take care of it and do this. And that person is going to work better in the office than they are at home. And the next person is going to work better at home than they are in the office. And so I think that with that comes a reliance on truth from everybody. Hey, this is how I best work. I'm going to continue doing my job very effectively and very efficiently. I'm going to continue doing this. I promise I will get all of this done, and actually following through with those things, as well as from the employer side of it. Hey, I'm trusting that you're going to go and do this. And you're doing a great job. You're continuing down this path. This is great. You are more productive there. Like that works for me, and allowing those things. And so I think that comes with such a hefty dose of truth from everybody involved to say, hey, this works for you. This works for me. These are why that it worked for both of us. This is where we're kind of having a little bit of a stumbling block on all of those things. How can we together come to solve that and fix that so that we both continue to get better and continue to benefit from this? And so I think that in many ways, that's another one of those lessons that has to kind of come out of COVID. We watched all of these huge companies, big and small companies, come in and say, hey, you can't do that. You can't. Oh, shoot, we got to do that.
You can.
Okay, well, let's find a way. And that's kind of the innovation I feel like you were kind of nodding to, Mom, earlier. Like it kind of forced everybody to be more agile, be more nimble with how they work and what that looks like, and with their own rules. That wasn't a negotiable. You either were in the office or you weren't in the office based on your industry and essential workers and all of this. And so I think that there's some really good things that came out of that. But again, like we were talking about a minute ago, I think some people learned those lessons and retained them. And I think some people learned those lessons and then quickly forgot them.
Yeah. Well, you and I had a conversation earlier this week about if people would just be truthful, admit their mistakes, did this, I screwed up, what a difference it would make. I mean, from political to business to personal, if you're able to just say, this is the truth. And not just try to sweep it under the rug and
pretend it wasn't a thing. It never happened, even though we were all there and all saw it.
Yeah.
So hold on. I want to give just a smidge more context on that. And this is kind of breaking my own rule. So when we're recording this, all of the signal gate with the DOD and Pete Hegseth and the bombings in Yemen and all of that is very much front page news. If Pete Hegseth and all of these people had come out and said, dude, we totally screwed up, we have got to do better,
we will do better,
and didn't just kind of point the finger back at us, making us look like idiots, like, no, that's not real, that's not true, you didn't actually see that. I think I would have been much more receptive to saying, oh, dude, we all screw up, that's cool, let's fix it. That's accountability. And so had you just come out and said, hey, we messed up, let's fix it, that would have been a completely different, non-divisive, non-contentious situation. That it didn't have to be like this. And so I think truth is really important.
That's one that, and I think I've talked about this before, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned in my professional life is own it. I mean, if you mess something up, own it. Like if I screw up, the first thing I'm going to do is say, hey, I'm going to go to my boss. I messed up. This is what I'm doing right now to fix it. What else do I need to add on top of that? And every single time they're like, oh, not a big deal. Do X, Y, Z, and we'll get this taken care of. Thanks for giving me a heads up. And it's never like, oh, you messed up, you're totally done for. Yeah. But every time I've seen someone try and cover up a mistake that they have made, fired. See ya. Bye.
Well, not every time.
Well, for a big mistake. Yeah. It's not, hey, I have a typo on this sheet. It's, hey, I did something.
Transpose the letters.
Yeah. Don't think I didn't think about it. I did.
Don't get me wrong. I always hate to have to go and say, I screwed up. I mean, there are days that I think, damn it, I don't want to have to say this, but it's the best way forward is to say, I did this. I did it. I'm sorry. I'll put something in place to keep this from happening again.
That's the power of truth. Being vulnerable enough to say, I screwed up. I did this. This is the outcome of it. Let me take care of it. Even if that means you have to ask for help. That's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you broke your rule. I'm going to pull you back in because there's one of these that I am relatively emotional about. And that is that we discovered that it doesn't take very much to pull children out of poverty. And so what it was is that the pandemic checks.
The stimulus checks.
Stimulus.
That's why I don't know why I can never remember that. The stimulus checks, which we did some research and were somewhere between $5,600 and a little over $11,000 per family, based on how many people were in the family, that made a huge difference in children's poverty. And I know what Cole is going to say. He's going to say who's responsible for that, and I think it's a great question. Because I don't think our government needs to, give everybody $5,000 a year to do this. But y'all, if $5,000 can make a difference, if that can make a difference to poverty, to children, we've got to find a way to do that. I mean, Cole, you're going to say then people need to be paid better. And I don't disagree with you. It's not the government's responsibility, but maybe it is the employer's responsibility. Maybe there's some integrity that needs to be addressed there.
I go back to our kind of like oligarchies episode. We could end poverty right now. We just don't want to. And that's not we on this podcast. That's in general. Nobody has to be hungry. Nobody has to go hungry.
That's not socialism either.
Right. So, but what I'm saying, the system isn't broken. It's just not designed with us in mind. And so I hear what you're saying. I think that the stimulus checks did a ton for a bunch of families and made a huge difference on those things. Like in that, in our notes, we had talked about in 2022, when the checks ended, child poverty doubled. And what that means and how many kids that actually impacts, like that is devastating to me. And I hate that. And I don't want that to be the case. I don't want anybody to be living in poverty. I don't want especially children who haven't even had a chance to go with the world and show them what they're made of to be living in poverty. But at the same time, like
Buy $5,000.
the system that is working exactly as it was intended. I think that the intentions were wrong.
I can't disagree with you on that one. I think it has been twisted into a manner that has changed the intent to be wrong.
Yes.
What do you mean?
I mean, if we're talking about capitalism as a system, the goal of capitalism is to drive innovation. It is to say, hey, who can do whatever it is you need done the best? Mm-hmm. When they can do it the best, they win that particular market. But the goal, I mean, the incentive there is that you're rewarded for your innovation. But the goal of that innovation shouldn't be to hoard as much wealth and resources as you possibly can as an individual. The goal of that innovation should be to innovate. Yeah. And when you innovate something, that makes it better for everyone else. But it has been taken and twisted into that, hey, we made this innovation, and because it's such a good innovation and it's better than anyone else's, that means that we now get to hoard these resources because we're the only one who has this.
And we're better than you because of it.
We're worth more than you because of it. Yeah. Even if you provide a service that we need, well, I need your service less than you need my product. So you're less worthy than me. Right. When, I mean, in reality, it should be a competitive system to generate innovation. That's what it's for. But it's been turned into, well, I have to find innovation because that gives me the ability to hoard resources.
The edge.
Yeah.
So one of the ones that kind of left me scratching my head and you guys had to explain to me was that premature births plummeted during COVID and during the lockdown in the first month. As a woman who has never been pregnant and who has never had a child, I have a really, really, really hard time wrapping my brain around how that is possible. Because all I could sit here and think was, okay, now you and or your spouse have lost your job, have gone on furlough. We don't know anything that's going on and what is happening and what the future holds. And are we all going to survive this? The stress is all up. Everything is crazy. And I'm having to deal with having a kid and figuring this out, whether you're a first-time parent or a third time, whatever it is, you still have to figure out how to do it. And that in my brain, as again, not a pregnant, not a parent person, I can't comprehend or had a really hard time comprehending how that was possible. How did that make premature births go down? How did women get better because of all of this chaos? And Cole had a fantastic explanation for me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is just a hypothesis here, but I think it's much easier for the body to fight the negative impacts of
exposure,
mental stress.
Oh,
so it's much easier if I am having anxiety, my body can combat the physical side effects of that more efficiently because they tend to be less severe physical impacts than it can, say, sickness and disease or pollution or injury. And so, like, if you've got 10 factors that are all driving stress that could lead to premature birth or other difficulties, then I think those physical stressors are probably more impactful. I think they're harder for your body to fight against. So if you've got 5 things that are very physically impactful and 5 things that are very mentally impactful, and even if the 5 that are impacting you mentally increase, even if they increase significantly with the decrease in the physical factors, it allows your body to fight that level of stress more efficiently because the physical side effects from the mental stressors are less impactful. And I'm not a scientist or a doctor, so I could be way off mark here, but that's just kind of how I interpreted that.
But the study showed that they had less exposure to other diseases, even though they had exposure to COVID, but I mean, supposedly reduced, but less exposure to other diseases. And that was helpful. The pollutants that went down because we weren't commuting and all that, trying to get to work and do all of those things, all of that came down and produced lower premature morbidity. It's a very interesting study and an idea, because I think you're right, Callie. You would think that the stress would be up so much, and you've got exposure to this, deadly disease, and yet it went down. And so to look at that, but I think it's the same thing when we're talking about alcohol consumption, because that one was the one that, so some countries had real restrictions on alcohol. And when they saw that, they had curfews or bans, then hospital admits, deaths declined, mental illness improved, all these kinds of things were better. Now, then if you look at somebody like us we didn't have those kind of bans, then alcoholism went up, domestic violence went up. There were lots of things that our lockdown produced because we did have access to alcohol. So one of the other things that had weird connotations was alcohol, because it depended on the country. So some countries did bans or did curfews, and their alcohol consumption fell down. And so they had fewer hospital admits. They had, their deaths declined even in the middle of this, where in the U.S. we didn't have those kind of bans. And
Texas, we made it more accessible.
Yeah, you could drive away with it where you couldn't do that. And so, yeah, and it was just interesting. I mean, when you didn't have it, your domestic violence went up. You had
up or down.
Domestic violence went down.
No, it went up when you had alcohol.
Thought you were saying when bans were in place.
No.
Yeah.
Got you.
Whatever.
I was confused too.
Anyway, I think it was that same thing with the pregnancy that you kind of thought, now what? And then with the alcohol, you kind of went.
I mean, it makes sense. You never make smart decisions when you're drinking. Like, you never do good, healthy things for you. At least I don't when I'm drinking. Like, drinking has never once in my life made me make better choices.
Every now and then I'll do something and I'll wake up the next day and I'm like, oh, drunk Callie was paying so much attention. She was really taking care of future Callie. I'm so thankful for her.
Yeah, but she only had to do that because she was drunk and doing goofy things.
Because she was planning for future Callie. She didn't want future Callie to have to suffer through
decisions that drunk Callie made.
Also true. You're not wrong, Cole.
As a mother, I'm going to go la 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 la.
So what we're saying is that reduction in alcohol consumption was, through the studies that you're seeing, was largely beneficial to the populations who had those restrictions placed.
Which is just interesting. But, we had a conversation about domestic violence and how did you measure that against alcohol consumption?
Yeah. In that one, I felt like really had the potential to have a lot of nuance because, okay, so you're in an environment where alcohol consumption is now reduced, but you also have other factors that are increasing stress levels, which is another one of those things that has a tendency to lead to domestic violence. And so I felt like, and maybe this is just me not being privy to the full study, but how do you measure that? Because, I mean, for it to be a really scientific study, you would need to change one variable at a time, not 5.
Yeah. Interesting statistic to look at and see.
Sure.
So, okay, here's a funny one. And we kind of touched on this. Women are better patients than men. Is that a COVID thing? So here, women were more likely to wear a mask. They were more likely to get vaccinated. They were more likely to follow public health guidance. We even had an instance where at one of the tennis competitions, the female players were the ones who were more likely to skip the tournament because of safety concerns than to play and to go on. And so I don't know if that's
be so macho.
Yeah. I don't know if that really is a COVID thing or is that a long-term thing that women do live longer than men, statistically speaking. So is it really a COVID thing?
I mean, I think that it just is exemplified in a scenario like that. So everyone, like, I don't ever go to the doctor. I had way more interaction with the healthcare system during that kind of time frame because it was just normally my interaction with the healthcare system is the commercials that come up on TV.
Okay.
Outside of that, I try and stay away from most of what they say a lot.
Yeah.
Some of that is because I think what they're selling is really bad for you.
Okay.
Some of that is, and I think that that's probably more likely from a man than a woman, because I think men in general probably interact with the healthcare system less because we don't have as many functions that require the same kind of attention.
Okay. That's much better than where I thought you were going. Okay.
I was going to say, there was a study done ages and ages ago about if you're going through the grocery store and you're trying to get out as fast as possible, your best bet is to get in the line with the most men. Not the shortest line, the line with the most men.
Why?
Because they're not going to stop and say, hey, I have a coupon for this, or hey, that was on sale for $3.99 instead of $4.99. They're not going to stop the continuous process of it. They're in it for the efficiency of everything so that they can get in and get out. They're ready to be done. They're done with all of this. They're just not going to stop and question it.
Don't care if it costs me an extra $1.
Right.
The way.
Whereas a woman wants to save that $1. I mean, again, statistically speaking, in general terms here, not every single time, but that was one of those things that when you guys were talking just now, I was like, I wonder if that is because men are questioning less. They are just trying to get through and move forward, move on to the next thing, get onto the to-do list and whatever it is. And while our to-do list may be different, the way that a man works through his is different than the way that a woman works through hers. And so I wonder if that plays a role into all of this.
Okay. So the other side of that is that COVID did not increase the amount of housework that men do.
Raise your hand if you're surprised. Sorry, Cole.
I don't want it to get slapped, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave my hand where it is.
I mean, but think about it. You're either, and I don't, you can't sit there and put it as a man or a woman. You can't add a gender to it. Okay, women are cleaner. That's not necessarily true. Men are cleaner. No. They're not necessarily true. And so if you were the person who was doing the housework, whatever your gender, you continued to do the housework and you probably did more because you're sitting in your own filth and you didn't want to do it or you didn't care.
So here's a hypothesis that I have. Prior to COVID, the housework that men and women did, they did separately. They
men's work and women's work.
Right. Like if dad gets home before you, he does the chores that he's supposed to do before you get home. Now, in our current setup, that's a little bit different because you work from home.
Yes.
But a lot of the chores that you do when dad was still working, you did while he was gone or while he was doing something else. Now,
when you're not together, where you can spend time together doing what you enjoy.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you for that interpretation.
Yeah. So I brought this up when we were talking about it before, but men have a tendency, if I am doing something that you asked me to do, but I'm not doing it the way that you wanted me to, you're going to smack my hand. And I am going to be done at that point. I'm going to say, okay, you do it. And I'm going to go do something else because you need it done a specific way. I just need it done.
Yeah.
And so when you are constantly in the same environment with that person, that is occurring on a much more regular basis because the man is not doing it the way that the woman wants it done. Her goal is to do it the way she wants it done. His goal is to get it done.
He wants it done. She wants it done right. And the definition of right in that case could vary greatly.
Yeah. And I'm not disagreeing with you.
Mine's the dishwasher. Poor Ryan cannot load the dishwasher like a normal, decent human being to save his life. And so I am just thankful that he gets them in there, and then I will reorganize them to where they actually make sense, and then we can move on. I don't complain.
And I'm going to say this. Did the same thing with you when you were here because you do it backwards.
Interesting. Because I just got in trouble the other day for the reason that he doesn't put it all in the right place is because I load it as a right-handed person and he is a left-handed person and you need to load it as a left-hander. So then I literally started doing it backwards and I was doing everything opposite and doing it all with my left hand. If I used to put it in the back left, I now put it in the front right, and he still can't follow suit. The man just can't follow directions. So just put it in the freaking dishwasher and I'll deal with it myself.
That's hysterical.
Exactly.
I just have to say.
Exactly.
But I don't give him a reason to stop doing it.
No.
Other than talking about it.
In mansplaining, you just did.
Said, put it here and I'll do it myself.
You did.
In the dishwasher. Put it in the dishwasher.
And I'll do it myself.
Because he's just doing it and I'm doing it right.
No, you're doing it your way.
I tried doing it his way and what it was.
What I'm saying is, again, for a man, The priority is getting it done. For a woman, the priority is getting it done the way you want it done.
You guys, in what world does it make any sense to put the same plates all over the bottom row? Anywhere.
In what world does it matter?
In the world of...
It does not clean as well if you don't put like with like.
I don't know about that.
No,
But
that's why you
it makes
stack
a
all of the
huge-
dinner plates in one place, because they're all, if you do big, little, big, little, big, little, they're not going to get cleaned as well.
Why?
Because of the way the water hits them.
Right. But so here's the
Go
thing.
get the instructions. I'm going to pull up the instructions on how to load a dishwasher and send it to all of y'all.
Here's my thing. I don't care how it gets washed right. I care about the time that has to be invested when I'm unloading it. So if they are all in the same row, all of the little plates are here and all of the big plates are here, I can literally grab multiple little plates at one time and get all of the little plates out with two hands and be done. If there's one over here and one over here, then you have to take time to stack them and put them all in order and get them all organized. It is way less efficient.
Cole's expression.
No, I actually agree with this.
Okay.
I mean,
that's the thing. I don't care where they go in the dishwasher. I don't care which hand you have to put them in the dishwasher. I just want them to be in the same place so that you can efficiently unload the dishwasher.
And that
valid
specific instance, I completely agree. I agree that it makes it more efficient. However, what I disagree with is, Mom, when we're talking about the mechanics of a dishwasher and it's got a rotary blade on the bottom that sprays from the bottom up top, if you've got a little plate and a big plate and a little plate and a big plate, it's not going to make any difference.
Yes, it does.
Coming from it's not. So then if that is the case, then putting all of the big plates together means that only the one in the front gets washed.
Don't you use logic on her, Cole.
No. Not going there.
Let's talk about telehealth and how, again, I think that we kind of touched on it a little bit in terms of businesses became more agile on how things could work and how, like, what the capabilities of people were. And I think that the healthcare industry is a really interesting perspective on that, or a really obvious answer to that, because you didn't have to go into the doctor to be diagnosed with whatever it is. You could call your psychiatrist from the phone on Skype or whatever it is and get the same amount, the same level of care, the same level of help. And so how much those telehealth visits became the norm, and
cheaper. Yeah. They were safer. You weren't going into a waiting room with three to 20 other people who are sick with something. And so it was just faster and better. CMS has just extended that for home care, saying that you can do your initial visit, or you can do some of your visits telehealth, because we couldn't do that before the pandemic. You had to be in the home with the patient to do that. And now they've extended that through September, I think, even. And it's a big deal for our industry to allow us to go via telehealth to visit that patient for tons and tons of reasons. It's a big deal. So yeah, I mean, that's what the study shows, is that people don't need to see the doctor in person. It showed that people with milder problems didn't rush to the hospital or rush to the doctor. It had to be a really significant issue to go to the doctor. And so they got better at home without doctor intervention sometimes, or with telehealth intervention, instead of going to the hospital.
This might be a bit of a hot take, but what I get from that is, one, we're hypochondriacs.
For
Two,
sure.
You don't have to go to the doctor's office for them to sell you their crap.
Also true.
And why we're hypochondriacs.
And three is almost in direct contradiction of what you talked about in the episode the other day, where we were talking about the things that your ER doctors want you to know. If you have a sudden change in symptoms, immediately come in. Don't ignore them. Like, don't stay at home. Come in.
I mean, yeah, I get that. Okay, here's my favorite one. It's an interesting statistic to me, because it is no secret that I love high heel shoes. And I mourn my high heel shoes, not wearing them, and I will also tell you that early in the pandemic, I got up and got dressed just like I was going into the office. That included shoes. And then when you're starting to do your laundry in the middle of the day, you're not doing that in high heel shoes. So, but
Mrs. Cleaver did.
the statistic is that high heels are dangerous and that ER visits declined sharply in 2020 when we went into lockdown. That it went from 16,000 reported incidents. And think about this. This is not just crap. I twisted my ankle and hurt. These are ER visits, 16,000 ER visits based on women wearing high heel shoes. And that went down to 6,300. So those are the diehards. I'm just telling you, those are the diehard women who kept their shoes and kept going on.
So
don't talk about my high heel shoes bad.
What I'm getting from this is stop trying to show off. Your life will be a whole lot safer. It's way better for your health if you'll stop trying to impress everyone around you. Just be you.
My shoes are not to impress anybody but me. Like those.
Fair enough. And how many times have you gone to the ER because of the high heels that you were wearing?
Never gone to the ER.
She has hurt herself on a few occasions.
And I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I fell off of a curb one time because I was mad and I was trying to read my iPad and walk at the same time.
So that's not the shoes' fault.
No, but the shoes fell off. And when they fell off, they did hurt my toes.
It hurts.
That's the worst incident. And I did not go to the ER. Just sucked it up and I hobbled to the car and then put my shoes back on.
Oh, gosh. So speaking of not having to show off for yourself or for anybody but yourself, this article also mentioned the audience-free home field advantage in sports.
Yeah, that it really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, remember when they couldn't have fans? I remember it in baseball stadiums. I don't know if they did it in football stadiums, but how they would just put cardboard cutouts of fans in the stands and then the teams were playing just themselves on the field with no fans.
The question was, with the home field advantage, are they more likely to win? And in COVID, without audiences, it didn't make a difference. Home field advantage doesn't really make any difference unless you're a smaller team. They also discovered that because teams weren't traveling, and there was something about a group of them being together in Florida, so there was some competition going on at some point in time there because they were under real restrictions. You know, they
had like a baseball bubble and a basketball bubble.
Yes. And what they discovered there is because since they weren't traveling to the other team's location, that they had less fatigue, they played better, no jet lag and that kind of thing, and they played better. But it didn't correlate to home field advantage.
I mean, because I feel like that really is the home field advantage is the fans, because the basketball court is the same, the football field is the same.
Yeah,
I mean, soccer is a little bit different because not every soccer field is the same size. Their pitches are variable, but I mean, all basketball courts in the NBA have the same measurement.
Lasso.
Yeah. And all of the football fields have the same length and width. So you're playing, I mean, you've got like little differences like turf versus grass and stuff like that. But like a baseball field, for the most part, is the same size.
Yeah. Pitches aren't. Soccer pitches are not.
No, not all soccer pitches are the same size. Yeah. But so, I mean, if the variable there that is different is the crowd, to me, that makes sense because it's the vocalizations, it's the aura, it's the cheering, because you do so much better when you've got people standing behind you cheering you on, as opposed to 100,000 people standing behind you booing you while you're at the plate. I mean, for your mental state, I mean, that erases that whole thing.
Yeah. I think one of the weird things that came out of this study was that flu and other respiratory diseases practically disappeared. That's another one of those scratch your head ones. We're in the middle of
perfect sense to me.
We're in the middle of a pandemic that's killing people for respiratory disease, but every other respiratory disease went down.
Well, because this disease was so much more infectious, so much more contagious, that we started putting measures in place to try and prevent the spread, that those less contagious diseases now have less opportunity to spread even more because we are being socially distanced or however you were going about addressing that transmission.
Yeah. I mean, and think about it. Your germ sponges, I mean, kids aren't going to school and bringing home all of this stuff to their families and whatever, bringing them over all of those germs and all of that yuckiness. I mean, I can't name any parent in my group that doesn't sit here and talk about, oh, we have kids and they're sick all the time because they're bringing all this home. And so with all of that social distancing, with all of that isolation, there wasn't an opportunity for those same respiratory diseases and things to jump from one to the next to the next.
Very true.
Okay. Y'all ready for some weird thoughts?
Yeah, let's do our
some weird memories. I think these would be memorable moments. Stanley Tucci's Negroni. Do y'all remember?
Yeah, no, you mentioned this earlier, and I remember who Stanley Tucci is, but I have no recollection of.
It's a big deal.
He would get on and do like an Instagram live of making a Negroni and showing you how to do it and doing all of this and different kind of variations
I don't
and
Instagram.
things.
And he's just kind of fun.
Yeah, I like Stanley Tucci. But...
And so he had this audience. It was upscale and
beautifully done. And yeah.
I think his wife was recording most of it. Okay. Do you remember about the Iditarod winner that year, the first year?
I don't specifically remember it from COVID, no.
Well, here's the story. They were in the middle of the Iditarod when the world shut down. So the winner, who was from Norway, is in Alaska, wins, has his 16 dogs, and has no way to get home. And he finally figured out a way for him to get home, but he couldn't take his dogs, and he wasn't willing to leave his dogs. It took him 3 months before he found an innovative way where he found somebody was buying an old plane.
Yeah, wasn't like the government of Norway or a museum or something buying like a
It wasn't a B-52, but it was a big plane like that. And he hitched a ride I think it was a museum call, on the plane that the museum had bought to get himself and his 16 dogs home.
That's wild.
Awesome. I totally admire him. Not leaving him.
So we talked earlier about the sea shanty singer. And I think that's just, you had all of these people doing, reels from home.
So a few years before that, and we talked about this a little bit kind of in pre-production, but there was sea shanties became very, very popular with young men from a video game.
Okay.
Sing it. Please, because I can't remember what it was, and I didn't know what it was until you sang it. And I just...
Set to sea, the name of a ship was a billy of tea.
Thank you.
You feel better now?
No.
It was a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, they ran rampant because...
And they would do one, and then they would add 15 other people to it. So you had this a cappella group all over. I mean, it was like...
Yeah.
They were...
Well, I mean, because that kind of a cappella group thing was already kind of popular. And then you had all these young men who had this video game that they had kind of gone back to that, I mean, a huge portion of the game is you're sailing this pirate ship around and your crew is singing these sea shanties. So all of these young men learned all of these old sea shanties and would go around singing them, and then they didn't have anything else to do besides scroll on TikTok and Instagram once COVID hit, because they weren't going to class. So
there you go.
They started singing these sea shanties, and then those sea shanties turned into a cappella groups, and then those a cappella groups turned into sea shanties that were people taking the same tunes and writing their own words for them, and they just absolutely exploded during that time frame.
The virality factor is certainly there.
So I definitely remember the container ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal. I don't relate that to COVID.
But I mean, it was like right in the middle of it, and everybody was really worried about it because we were already concerned about shipping slowdowns. Yes. And now you've got one of the most important passages in the entire world that has a giant ship turned sideways in it. And we were all just sitting here like, how?
2 or 3 weeks, wasn't it?
I think it was several days, But I mean, I remember the memes coming out where it's comparing them to the episode in Austin Powers where he's in the golf cart in the hallway and he turns the golf cart around, but he has to do like 1,000-point turn to get it done. And you're just like, how do you have this giant ship that gets turned sideways like this?
I'm not a. I'm what?
It was 6 days that it was stuck there.
The I'm not a cat Zoom meeting.
I didn't know what that was.
So I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, it's a guy who is like showing up to court after they had stopped doing court in person, and he hops on Zoom, and it's got one of the filters on Zoom that makes him look like a cat. But he joins the meeting, and the judge is like,
"Excuse me,
Mr. So-and-so?" I don't know, Your Honor. I'm not a cat.
Y'all said it was an attorney. And so he has all of the rest of the, kind of pomp and circumstance of everything and the reverence for the courtroom and everything. And he's like, but I'm not a cat. I swear I'm not a cat.
I don't remember if it was the attorney or if it was the client, but it's like,
it was the attorney.
Somebody's kid was using this computer earlier and they were in class and goofing around with the filters. Yeah. They were a cat. And now dad has to go to work or go to court and he's a cat. I'm not a cat, Your Honor. That one was pretty funny.
Bake that up pasta recipe.
100% I remember this.
Did you make it?
Yeah. And I'm not even on TikTok. So I probably made it like 3 weeks after everybody else did. But yeah, no, it was tasty.
Anything else that y'all remember? There's so much there. If you think about, we didn't go to court. That all had to change. And I think it's so valuable, Cal. You talked about how companies had to really look for innovation. They had to, hunt. How do we continue to do this? One of the things that we didn't talk about was restaurants, because you had some friends in Houston that were running a restaurant at the time and the impact that it had on that service industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of became my little treat to myself. Like I said, I was living alone. And so I would go out and get drive-through fancy fine dining food because I wanted to support them and because I was so thankful that they were okay and because I was desperate for some kind of human interaction and I couldn't get it anywhere else. And so, it has been really, really fascinating to see kind of how COVID and the pandemic has made lasting impacts on the service industry in general and who has stayed and who made it through and how they became more nimble to meet customers' needs and meet their own needs in that process. I'm just so thankful.
One of the things that I didn't think about that came up that was just mentioned in this study is that the people in city centers who clean city centers, who work down there, and the impact that it had on their jobs too, that there wasn't anybody at downtown, so you didn't need to clean downtown the same way.
Nobody's littering, so there's no need to pick up litter. Yeah. Crazy.
But is there any part of it you want to revisit? I was also thinking about the lines that we put in place to give people vaccinations, where hundreds and hundreds of cars would get into a line. The Motor Speedway here in Fort Worth is where one of the centers, and the organization about getting people in and through and the stages of getting people through, where you just had hundreds of people going through to get a shot.
Yeah.
Speaking of lines, if there was one thing that I missed that I would bring back, it would be the stickers on the floors, like in grocery stores and gas stations.
Yeah, stay out my bubble.
Like, get away from me. Like, give me some room, please.
Yeah.
If I walk up to and this drives me nuts. Like, you're standing in line at the grocery store and you're standing a respectable amount. Like, you don't have to be 20 feet away. You're 6 feet away. If people just walk up and get in between, you're like, excuse me.
I can feel your breath.
I am a 6'6" man in a bright red shirt. I know you can see me. You can tell I'm in line.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, I don't want to feel you.
So, petitions, we'd like to see those come back.
Again, I think that there were some really good lessons learned that I wish had taken better root to kind of thrive. People getting outside.
Grass.
Celebrating each other's accomplishments. I think about in New York City at 7:00 every evening, everybody opening their windows to clap for frontline workers and everything like that. Just the camaraderie that created. Hey, we're all in this together. It totally sucks and is really weird and we don't know what's going on, but we're all in this together. We'll figure it out. I think is really, truly incredible. And I don't think that we've done anything like that since probably September 11th, where we've kind of really, truly come together as a big, huge nation. And I'm with Cole. I absolutely think that the fallout of our closeness and our willingness to be together and all of the contention that has taken root is detrimental. And I'm really bummed about that. And so that is what I wish we had taken better away from COVID. The camaraderie of, we'll figure this out. Whatever that looks like, we'll make it work. Yeah.
That we have not recovered.
Yeah.
Okay. Good story. So I love this. Speaking of high heels, there is a woman, Mari, who was a black belt and was wearing
a black belt still.
Correct. Is a black belt who had gone to the station wearing her high heels because she was trying to get them. I think they were new shoes and she was trying to, break them in. When she notices a guy in the parking lot who looked a little bit strange, but as she is at the counter to pay for her stuff, he walks in and says he's going to rob the place, and she whips his ass.
Yeah, you can see her there on the CCTV footage where she's kind of like standing there, walking up to the gas station attendant to check out. And this guy comes in and he puts something in front of the door to block the door, and then comes around and he's got his hands in his pocket and he's talking about robbing the place, and he turns his attention from her to the gas station attendant. And she's not a terribly large woman,
no,
but she just grabs this guy's arm and starts going to town on the back of his legs.
Literally chases him out of the store.
Chases this man out of the store. They ended up catching him later. He had like a gun and a knife on him, but this woman in her high heels whipped his ass.
Sorry, Karen, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, she hadn't been wearing heels because of COVID and was getting herself and her body back used to it again. And so she just happened to be wearing them in this convenience store, and she goes to town on him.
That's a good story.
That's a great story.
That's a good news story. So, well, I'm glad we're here and we're together. Can be together when we want to be.
Love you.
Love you guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.